call the meeting of the Sweetwater County School District Number 1 Board of Trustees to order. Okay, first of all, I would like to introduce our student leader for the month. This is Sydney Jones from Farson. Sydney, if you'd just like to wave. And we would like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have the Rock Springs High School Mixed Choir. Sydney is going to join some elementary students who are going to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance after the choir sings the national anthem. Please stand.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
If we could have our elementary students come up and join Sydney. Okay, and we have a Black Butte student too. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. We are now going to have a second selection from the Rock Springs High School Mixed Choir. However, due to copyright laws, we're unable to stream it. So those of you in the community who may be listening, you're going to be muted for a few moments while this selection goes on, and then we'll resume the meeting. Please.
thank Rochelle for taking the initiative to keep our students safe. This is an example of when we see something, we say something. Is Miss Rochelle here? Thank you so much. Students are the future leaders of our schools, communities, and nation. We would like to recognize those students that came to the board meeting this evening to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance with their principals and the Rock Springs High School Mixed Choir showcasing their talents in the arts, which was beautiful. Good job. Let's start with our Pledge of Allegiance. If the principals would also come up with the students. Ian Fulmer from Eastside Elementary. No. Thank you, buddy. You guys want to go up there? Brighton O'Malley from Walnut Elementary. Cadence Gibbons from Pilot Butte Elementary. Hartley Griffiths from Stagecoach Elementary. Rylan Slagowski from North Park Elementary. Seth Dennis from Black Butte High School. Bennett Pedri from Desert View Elementary. Thank you. And last but not least, Jessa Salone from Sage Elementary. Yeah, the pledge is gonna have to squeeze in so you guys can get a picture. You guys, Nancy, you're gonna have to scoot in, yeah. No.
Oh, that was really good, guys. Okay, 1, 2, 3. We're gonna do a couple more. Let's do them. 1, 2, 3. Thanks, guys.
Next, we would like to recognize the Rock Springs High School Mixed Choir under the direction of Miss Kelsey Wilson. So, Miss Wilson, I'm going to have you join your choir up here, but I'm going to go through the list of the names as I call your name. If you'll come over here and receive your certificate, shake the board members' hands, and then we're going to get one big picture, okay? First, we would like to start with Briley Albiston, True Ann Berg, Serena Barrett, Brody Brower, good job, Aurora Brown, Ty Clark, Noah Cowgill, Tina Dumas, Giovanni Escabel, Kira Forbush, Morgan Forbush. Do you want to take Jeffrey George, Jason Godfrey, Emiliano Gonzalez, Karsten Hansen, Sabrina Henley, Isaiah Hunter, Jasmine Jamali, Haley May, Shane Meets, Landon Peebles, Cameron Raborti, Maggie Smith, Anna Sorensen, Alexander Spence, Bella Starr, Damian Stratton, Kaylin Swinson, Samuel Taylor Lee, Josephine Turner, Isabel Wasim, Dakota Wheeler, Tatum Woodward, and Emma Zanetti.
We're gonna have you come in around the board.
If the high school administration could join us up here, if you are here, Mr. Supis.
Okay, I think I got everybody. 1, 2, 3. We'll do a couple more. 1, 2, 3, smile. Awesome, thank you guys.
And that concludes recognition for this evening. Yes.
What a wonderful treat. It's so nice to have students here again. Mrs. Murray, Miss Murray, if we could have the roll call, please.
Mr. Reedy? Mr. Reedy? Mrs. Summers?
Here.
Mr. Mickelson?
Here.
Mr. Jackman?
Here.
Mrs. Thompson?
Here.
Chair Jellicoe?
Here. Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the addendum items. It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Our superintendent reports tonight. Our first one is our K-6 Elementary and Black Butte High School Student Achievement Presentation.
You're being shy, so I'm not sure.
We don't do shy.
Mhm. Please proceed.
All right, good evening, Chairman Jellicoe and Superintendent Kelly McGovern and the rest of the board. My name is Sarah Blake and I am the principal, excuse me, at Desert View Elementary School, and I am here to kick off this report for you. So we're going to talk a little bit about our school performance reports at the K-6 level and plans for what we're going to see from them, and then Bryant will take it away with Black Butte. So I'm going to start with just kind of explaining where we are right now. So you can change the slide. Okay, so just a little background on what puts together our school performance reports. We have at the K-6 level, excuse me, 4 performance indicators that we are assessed on from the state based on various things: achievement, equity, growth, and then English language performance. And so with achievement, that's talking about the amount of students that are proficient when we are YTOP testing. And then equity and growth is what we're going to talk about a little bit more, and that's why I have those italicized. Sorry. And then the English language performance has to do with where our English language learners are performing when it comes to access testing and YTOP. So with equity and growth, what they look at for those specifically in the K-6 buildings is the 3rd to 4th grade growth essentially that we see in our students. And so that the equity is our bottom 25% performance of our students. So those students we watch as they progress from 3rd to 4th grade to see if their scores change on YTOP. And then the growth piece is just the overall achievement growth of 3rd grade to 4th grade. Any questions on that so far? Okay. So we have this year, the state has paired the K-6 buildings to make our performance reports. So we have a shared performance report because we switched to the K-3 and the 4-6 model. Us K-3 buildings don't have any 4th graders left to compare that growth piece. So they had to combine the schools together. So our school pairings are with Eastside, we have Walnut and Desert View. And then with Pilot Butte, we have Sage, Stagecoach, and North Park. And so when we look at that, that's because most of the students from Walnut and Desert View go to Eastside in their 4th grade year. So the state figured that's the easiest way to track that cohort of students. And so that is why now, instead of individual school reports for the K-6 level, you see just 2 school reports, but they're shared among all of our schools. And then lastly, what is looked at is they bring forth the performance level of exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, partially meeting expectations, and then not meeting expectations. So currently, our 2 school performance reports in these pairings, we are not meeting expectations. And so that's what we're going to talk to you a little bit about, the exciting stuff that we have planned to make that change. Any questions for me before I pass it on?
Any questions, trustees? Please proceed.
All right. Next slide.
Okay, good evening. So I've got this, well, maybe this next piece to visit with you guys about is the Guaranteed Viable Curriculum and Scope and Sequence. And what that entails is, as a K-6 team, all of us working together, because when we talk about all students being all our students, this becomes more and more, before I knock that off, evident as all of our data is tied together and our growth. So as a K-6 team, we're super excited. We're going to be working together very closely to be aligning better everything that we've got going on from the state on down. And this is really based on the idea of universal design for learning and backward design, depending on when you've received training throughout a career. And what this does is this takes evidence-based practices, and it's going to it's a globally endorsed idea. It starts with the state, who's identified our standards. These are the skills that the state has said, these are the skills that all Wyoming kids need to know and be able to do to be successful. And then they also come up with an assessment to measure how have we done within those skills. That's the YTOP. That's what we are giving. And so from there, we then we plan and design our instruction to go along with that. And that's this next phase that we're kind of working on as staff. We're going to be working together to develop the scope and sequence of our instruction. The K-3 teachers the K-3 buildings with the in-town staff are going to be working together along with input from Farson and from Wamsutter, working together on November 4th after going through a crosswalk of all sorts of information that is going to be talked about again next. And we're going to take all of that information and revamp our scope and sequence of how and when and where all of this information gets put into lessons for learning and growth for students. And K-6 is also going to be collaborating too, because this is a our 4th through 6 teachers are going to be doing this also. This is a K-6 continuum of instruction, making sure that that's all flowing and addressing the skills that the state has identified. This is really where the art and the science of teaching come together. We've got the science of that through the evidence-based universal design of learning concept, and the art of teachers bringing that to life for kids in the classroom, K through 6. Any questions on what that'll look like?
Any questions?
Thank
All
you.
right.
Next up.
Good afternoon. Vertical alignment PLC work, what vertical alignment basically is how everything flows together throughout the curriculum and standards. So what we're discovering is there's a lot of things that are on the test that aren't taught. So what we're doing with these crosswalks is we're establishing a scope and sequence like Janine just talked about. And what this is going to do, this is going to maximize our efficiency in the classroom. At Desert School, it's easy for us to do because our teachers go K1, I've got a K1, 2 teacher. So she obviously knows how everything flows from K1 and 2. My 3-4 teacher, she knows how everything flows from 3-4. 5, 6, 7, 8, they taught each day. And at some point during the day, every teacher is going to affect every kid. So at Desert School, it's fairly easy to do that. But when you got these other schools, it's not all that simple to do. And that's why we're developing the crosswalks to identify the holes. Whether or not we realize it or not, in the state curriculum, and it's not just Wyoming, it's every state. Every state has holes in their curriculum. Where one curriculum leaves off, another one takes on, and there's a gap. There's some things that's not even in the curriculum. And what this is going to help us do to identify that.
And just to go a step further then, when we come into, whether it's Wamsutter or Farson or our in-district schools here or in the Rock Springs area schools, we really look at vertical alignment. So we've got some work to do across each of our grade levels within our schools, but then each school has some vertical teams, and we work together through our schools to do some efficiency, make sure we're working efficiently across those standards, as Mr. Roney had mentioned to you. And one of the other little connections that I am glad to be a part of is, as executive director for Head Start, we get a real opportunity in this district, and you guys have heard it before. Only school board, only school in the state that houses Head Start, and it really gives us a benefit. So Head Start has a couple of meetings every year to help align what they are doing with where those kiddos need to be when they come to us in kindergarten. And so with those meetings, we send our kinder team down to Head Start several times to talk to them and look and observe and answer questions for them. And we offer time for them to come and see our schools and keep that vertical alignment going there too. So it is a pre-K-12 system that we hope to achieve by doing vertical alignment and becoming more efficient.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. So our district has a systemic advocacy program that is district clear across the entire district, and it includes our counselors, it includes all of our teachers as well. And we just want to be able to share that as we design the advocacy programs, it is different in each of the schools. There are different needs that the schools have. And so it is a key role, though, in helping our students be able to identify and know who the advocates are in the schools where they are at and where they are attending. So it's very important that the entire school is involved. And we are missing several counselors throughout the district, and they do teach some additional social skills lessons. And so we need to recognize that even though we may not have all the counselors we need to add, in some of those social skills lessons, we're working with our advocacy groups and with everyone else in the schools to support our students.
To piggyback on that, each program is a little different in each school depending on their needs. However, the advocacy program itself is extremely explicit, purposeful, and evident within each building that supports every single student within their school community. It could range from small group lessons to whole group lessons with different advocates, which are the adults in the building, entails custodians, classroom teachers, service providers, all educators being positive role models, and continuing on with those social skills, whether it be through direct counseling or counselors going to every classroom, or again, those small groups. And we've been doing this. We've not faltered. We've been doing this for years, and we continue to grow and learn in all of our buildings and do exactly what we need to do to advocate for students' social, emotional, and mental health. We know that that's on the rise, and we know that we need to have our eyes wide open and supporting them in fun, meaningful ways. Do you have questions for us on advocacy?
Any questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. Mrs. Ellison and myself are fortunate enough to talk about intervention, which is that key piece to really fill in some of those gaps that we talked about and to push those kids forward that are growing like they need to. Before we get into that, so Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 are the levels of education that we provide. And Tier 1 is that general classroom education that all students get. And then if there's some of the students that don't get it the first time, then we provide the Tier 2 intervention, that's within the classroom. The classroom teacher pulls some of those groups and reteaches that information. And then some of those students get it, and the ones that don't, then we move into the Tier 3. And that's that level where we're able to provide some of that intensive support to really try to hit those kids that weren't able to get it the first 2 times. We're fortunate enough at the K-3 levels that all of our students or all of our schools qualify for Title I services, which is extra funding for supports for students. And a majority of the funding goes to our Title I teachers at that level. And those teachers are able to provide some of those supports, especially for those Tier 3 interventions to help those students catch up. We also have interventionists that are hired with our ESSER funds. Those interventionists in each building also help with some of those tier 3 interventions. They work very closely with those Title I teams to identify those skill gaps, work with the teachers to look at the data to see where their time is needed, and then really push in and put those hard supports in for those students that really need that focused intervention. The next intervention that we have is special education. Special education is in every building, and that's for some of our students that need that additional support in that smaller setting, those accommodations to be successful to help with their learning. It could be on the same standards, and some of our special education students might be on alternative standards, but we still make sure that we're filling those gaps and providing those services to make sure that they're still growing and learning as students. Another thing that we've been doing at the elementary levels has been pushing into that co-teach model where we have those special education teachers inside the classroom with the teachers, the general education teachers, providing those supports so we don't have to pull all students out of the classroom to get those interventions, but they can support them with the rest of the students in there and help meet their needs within the classroom. With a lot of those staff members and those services, we're able to provide smaller groups. I know there's been some concerns with some of our larger elementary schools that they worry about class size, but we're fortunate enough to have all of those staff members to be able to push into classrooms to break those sessions down into smaller amounts of students so we can still provide that intense intervention just at a smaller level. And some schools call it the WIN groups, some of them call them flooding, but it's just different names for the same thing where we can push those students into smaller groups and help them to learn and grow.
Also, we do small groups like we just talked about. And the other thing that we're trying to implement, we know by looking at data and scores, we're implementing Reading Horizons, and that is K-3, and then 4 through 12, it's Elevate, which is meant to be an intervention for students. And we have some coaching that will happen with that this year as well. And then we also have our extended day program. So we select students based on need, like, do you need to come and get some extra support? And also there are some opportunities after school that are just like STEAM or STEM or something that will extend learning as well. We have the academic achievement monitoring progress system in place, K6, and that's actually been put into a form where we can show the growth of students starting, like if you were referred in K, what did we do to help them, and 2 and 3, and we should be able to track that data all the way to 12, the way that we're building it. Right now it's implemented K6 so that we can see. And it's interesting because you might start that process and a kid just takes off and they don't need extra help after that. So that's really important. We have some coaching and support from an outside consultant for reading that is helping us to make sure that we are teaching the best strategies and the kids are doing the heavy lift and they're doing as much of the reading as that they can. And it just comes back to that multi-tiers of support. But when we talk about it for academics, it's also for behavior. So we have access to being able to build and implement plans for kids who are struggling behaviorally. And that looks a variety of ways based on what the kid needs. So we want to help them both academically and behaviorally to be successful in our schools. So we really do have a nice system set up to support all kids. Like some kids for like the behavior side, because I know we didn't talk a ton about that piece because advocacy was before us. It may not just be counseling, but it may be like a tracker that tracks the behavior they're trying to work on, whether it be getting to school, a reward they can earn. It's our Swiss system that helps us to track what behaviors are being seen the most in our building and how can we support, first of all, distinguishing the behaviors across the building, but then just helping individual students be successful as well. You guys have any questions for us?
Any questions? Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Marcy and I are going to talk about parental involvement. And parental involvement is really essential to schools. Last year, there was a committee that I know a few of the board members and community members were on. We had students and teachers that were on that. And through that work, they really articulated the focus of community and parent involvement through that committee. And it's a priority in this district. And overwhelmingly, there's research also that demonstrates that parent involvement in children's learning is positively related to school achievement. And through this connection, it's important to be aware that parent involvement, it supports the learning, the behavior, the attitudes, regardless of the factors such as the parent's income, their education level, or their employment status. So parent involvement is really a necessity and really the future of this community.
Yeah, so parents are a staple in the K-6 school performance. And although we're up here in Pilot Butte shirts, really, this list is not comprehensive, sorry. It's a collection of ways that the parent community connections influence and enhance learning experiences for all. Any questions for us?
Any questions? Thank you.
There you go. How's everybody doing? So we're to my slides about Black Butte High School, and I'm here to kind of celebrate because our school exceeded alternative education expectations. So really excited to be speaking to you about this. So I'm just going to walk you through how have we gotten to where we are at Black Butte High School. So here's our school performance reports. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And I have my little notes up here because I think I need to get some glasses. So the first thing I'm going to highlight is 2019 to 20, kind of what we did there. That's actually the first year I took over as the principal at Black Butte High School. Some of the things we did in that year is we actually had our first time with a graduation coach, and it was successful. That was the first year we actually started implementing the board approved the previous year, the 18 credit general diploma. So that did help us out. We had a new attendance policy that went into effect that really helped get kids into the building. And then we started doing, the high school had done it for a while, credit recapture for kids to wait to make up their credit after their first semester. So that's something we implemented our first year. And then we're going to move on to 2021, same slide. So the next year, what we did is we implemented block scheduling. We were still operating on a 7-period schedule, which meant a lot of our teachers had to meet in PLC groups after school. And a lot of times the PLC groups really didn't, I mean, you know, we had a math teacher with the science teacher with this teacher and didn't really go well together. So that's the year we actually joined forces with Rock Springs High School to give a lot of my young staff that people to connect with in, you know, science. What are you doing? Some great things in science. And it really opened up those conversations because we do share kids, not a ton, but from Black Butte High School to Rock Springs High School to make sure that if a kid goes from Rock Springs High School to us, they're going to receive the same education and vice versa. So that's kind of what we did in 2020, 21. Can we go ahead and go to the next slide? And I am going heavy on the bear puns. I apologize for that. If you love bear puns, good job. If not, I apologize. I love bear puns. So 2021, 22, that's the first year we actually implemented the guided study program. And it kind of, the key word is guided. It's not just a study hall. We just dump kids in. We actually have the teachers in there to help them guide them. Okay, what work do you need? Let's have this form out. Let's reflect upon our learning. We also implemented the DEN time, which is deliberate engagement now. And we're still continuing the DEN time. It's been successful to really identify kids and get those kids to the rooms that they need to be working on to get the supports they need. And then we also, again, joined forces with the high school again with our Friday school. And that opened up some kids that were falling behind and have credit deficiency to get those kids all caught up, especially some of our seniors and some of our freshmen last year that had failed first semester, kind of let them stay afloat. We're going to go to the next slide. Oh, actually, I forgot some of that first slide. Can we go back one slide? Thank you. Also in 2022, so what are we doing this year? Again, we're like the rest of the district, we are moving towards the evidence-based grading. With that, we've actually have some help with professional development through Gene and Copper, Don't Ever Stop. And we're lucky to actually get them at Black Butte for 3 days this year. So they'll actually come to our school and see what Black Butte's all about. But we've been joining their professional development. That has been helping the Rock Springs High School Tigers, but in turn is also helping my staff out in that. So we're going to continue on with that work. We're also still working on the creating a guaranteed viable curriculum. I know we have our TLCs are breaking out. So like, biology is working on one, physical science, and we're really developing what is our priority standards. What do we want kids to accomplish, but before they take that YTOP. And we're also developing a scope and sequence to make sure, are we getting those key essential skills taken for those big state tests? And that's kind of what the big work is, because just like the other schools, we still have some work to do in our achievement area, especially on the YTOP math and language arts. So that's one of our goals, is to try to bring those scores up. Now to the last slide. And I do want you guys to acknowledge the fact that I did come up with a dancing bear in my slides. It took me a while to figure that out, but he's dancing. But the thing I want to tie this all back into is none of this stuff was possible that we've done in the 4 years without my staff and students. We strive at Black Butte High School to build positive relationships between our staff and students, amongst staff, and vice versa. We have great teamwork amongst our staff. We'll help out, we'll pitch in, we'll do whatever we need to help a kid become successful. We have the small class sizes. That is a huge help, to get those kids in the smaller rooms and do that. And the other thing we really try to do is to try to do a lot more hands-on activities. Sometimes we've got to use the books, sometimes we've got to use the computers, but sometimes we can put that away and give them something more hands-on. So in the end, and then the last piece I want to show you, our motto this year is where each bear matters. And I'm kind of excited. This is our computer graphics design team, or not our team, our class. They actually created their first banner, and we actually are ready to pick it up tomorrow and hang it up in our school. So they just had some where each bear matters, and that's kind of the motto we live by at Black Butte High School. Any questions for me?
Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Jackman?
And Blake, this is more for the whole group. One of you mentioned there were bits of the test that we just weren't teaching. Is that a curriculum choice on the district's part or on our part as trustees? Is that we ran out of time?
I think it is just really taking a closer look of what we're teaching and taking that, diving deeper into what are the Wyoming state standards. We were addressing a lot of things, but doing these crosswalks, we've identified some areas of stuff that, okay, this is on the YTOP test, and we may not have done a great job of covering it in our curriculum. So that's the purpose of this, to make sure what we're teaching is actually aligned to what we're being assessed on. So there were some gaps, there were some absolute holes that we needed to make sure we were filling those holes. And that's why we're trying to put all our curriculum towards the beginning. This is what we need to know. We need to cover this stuff first, because it is, we do need that stuff. And then the stuff that maybe might be nice to get to, let's get to that when we're done with our testing and we make sure that our kids understand the key component skills. Anybody else like to add on to that? Sorry about that. I got off on a tangent. Aligning to the curriculum map. Go ahead. I'm going to tag team out on this one. Here you go.
That's where the crosswalk piece comes into that we were mentioning, because we've gone through the SAC committee process and we built curriculum maps, and at the time they may have aligned to the YTOP blueprints when they were created, but now we're finding we're on year 7 with some of them, or 8, where they're not quite aligning with the YTOP blueprints. So that's the work that we're doing right now that we were talking about. So
thank you very much.
Any other comments? I would just like to mention, as some of you may know, I spend a lot of time with the legislature in the interim, and we've done some advocacy as a district. We've testified a number of times. So today from 8:30 to almost 5:30, I spent on Zoom with joint education meeting, and then they also met with joint appropriations. But a couple of points that I thought might be helpful to this group. First of all, there was a discussion about pre-K. We're finally talking about pre-K and the advantages of pre-K, and that how kids who are fortunate enough to attend a good pre-K school are ahead. And those that are unfortunately not able to attend a good pre-K school oftentimes need potty training. They're not to the maturity level that a kindergartner needs to be. So we're having finally some of those conversations. Secondly, so I thought that might be interesting to the Head Start people in particular. Secondly, a big emphasis on mental health, not only for students, but for staff, and how what can the state do in terms of prioritizing some things there that to help, like I said, not only students, because it was brought out that in many communities, and ours is unfortunately one that does not have a lot of mental health access. I mean, we have limited, but when you've got to go 2 or 3 months out to get an appointment, that's not helpful if you're in a crisis. So, and there are some communities that don't have anything. So, and they have, the legislature has cut, not only education, but they have cut health and human services too. So this morning they got blasted a little bit. School Boards Association presented a survey they had. The University of Wyoming and WEA did a survey. And all these surveys are talking about how teachers are overwhelmed. There's too many standards. We need to prioritize the standards. And so I just want to let you know, and you can pass that information on to your staff, that there are people out there that are advocating for teachers. Several people on the committee said, we're not blaming teachers. Teachers are working hard. You know, part of the responsibility is on this body, meaning the legislature, and the things that they have mandated without appropriate funding, without the resources. Funding is one, but there are others. So there was, like I said, this morning was a very interesting discussion, and with some of the legislators actually taking on, said, this body, the legislature, is responsible for a lot of this, because there are still a handful of legislators even on the joint appropriations and joint education committees that keep pointing out 45% of our students aren't reading at 3rd grade. They pushed back a lot on those kinds of comments because they don't help. Let's look at the positives. What can we build on as far as the positives, instead of, turning around and adding to the disrespect and the devaluing of our people when they say, but, 45% of our students aren't reading. That's not accurate. They may have gaps, but that doesn't mean that they're not reading. And that was pointed out by some legislators. So we have some real advocates in the legislature. We have others that are deniers, for lack of a better word. But I wanted to pass that on today. And thank you for all that you're doing to help our students become as successful as they can be. And if there's anything that we as a board can do to assist with that, please ask.
Can I just clarify on my clarification to Mr. Jackman's question? Thank you. When I got back there, Janine reminded me also the original start of the curriculum map process with the SAC committee that we did in the past, we were aligning also to pause at that time. And so not YTOP. So that's why some of those gaps are there too. Thank you.
And it was also brought up how many times we've changed tests. and the goalposts keep changing. I think that's the frustrating, even with our scores this year, the goalposts changed again. So, okay, thank you. Is there anything else? Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for bringing your students too. Our second superintendent report is school improvement plans. Ms. Garner.
All right. Exactly. Very exact. Okay. Zach, can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, Chair Jellicoe and trustees. I do want to thank the K-6 principals for being here tonight. They have done an amazing job embracing where we're at and just preparing to move forward, and I'm going to tell you about some of their plans as we're moving forward. In September, we invited school leaders and their school improvement teams in to 2 school improvement planning work sessions. As you may recall, we submit those school improvement plans this month after receiving your approval. This school year, after being a part of the pilot program, remember last year with the statewide new template, we easily rolled that out this year because everyone was familiar with the tool after piloting it last year. So you saw the school improvement plans in your board documents. The teams participated in collaborative discussions about the school's biggest areas of need and listed those as priority practices as shown in section 2 of each of their plans. Section 3 then asks for their plan of action that each school takes in the upcoming school year. The goal must be measurable of what the adults are going to do this year. There are action steps listed to make the goal happen, and state data is also shown in that section. Section 4 is the overall summary of the plan. So if you want to scroll down, you can see the final summary. As you may recall from last year, having the plans in the same format made it very easy to read and know what each school plans on targeting and the steps they plan on taking as they move forward. Leaders are going to revisit these plans multiple times this year in our principal PLC work and with their teams so that we can make sure that we are monitoring and moving forward. With the state change of pairing the schools this year, elementary school improvement teams spent time with their paired school in our work sessions as well to discuss goals and possible needs for working together to increase student success and show growth, as Mrs. Blake described in her slide. As you reviewed the plans, you may have noticed that our schools have set improvement goals such as continuing to work on an effective MTSS or RTI system within their buildings, a laser focus on instruction, as well as analyzing data. As we have gone through, after a couple of years of being in this position, it's been fun to kind of unfold all of the layers that have been in place from the previous years. And so one of the things that we have discovered is that the curriculum maps were not readjusted yearly based on changes, based on blueprints from the YTOP, and based on data. There was never kind of that process of analyzing data. So it's been fun to guide the principals into that work, and they are guiding their teams into that work so that we can make sure that we are analyzing our data and using it to drive our instruction. And so that, if you notice in the plans, many of the schools, that is their number one goal this year, is to analyze data and teach their teams how to effectively analyze that data, use it in their PLCs to really truly intervene with the gaps that we have from these past few years. So we look forward to notable change this year, and we are asking for your approval of those school improvement plans. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Item number 4 is the communications and correspondence or public comment. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district's website. As per policies B, D, D, H, and KD, please limit your comments to the board to one time. If your comments have been previously submitted in writing, please refrain from addressing the board a second time. Policies B, D, D, H, and KD continue to state, questions asked by the public shall, when possible, be answered immediately by the chairman or referred to staff members present for reply. Questions requiring investigation shall be referred to the board or administrative staff for consideration and later response. We do have a couple of written comments, so I'll read those first. Derek Allison, who is a staff member. What does the school board think about implementing an administrator evaluation system similar to the teacher evaluation system that is filled out by staff in order to give their administrators feedback on what they are doing well and what they can improve on. Everyone would benefit from this, in my opinion. Thanks. The second one from Tracy Watkins, who is also staff, regarding the new virtual policy. This is written way too loose. It says a student can miss up to 50% of the year, and a teacher must make all learning available virtual. This is cruel and unusual punishment to each teacher. Homebound schooling was available to help kids who cannot attend and was much more manageable. For instance, my forensic science class is processing a crime scene, learning to secure, document with photos, evidence logs, sketches, and collecting of evidence. This is an experience I cannot provide to a home learner or even one that misses every other day. In addition to that, it's entirely impossible to run chemical tests on evidence and view it under a microscope. To ask the teachers to prepare entire new lessons and entries in Canvas as to different students is asking them to have multiple courses and preps. I have to write up all these directions. There are no books or guidelines to teaching them the hands-on training. It's much easier to show and involve the students that expect them to read it and understand all the intricate steps. Much can be said for teaching students to work math problems. They learn by seeing and doing, making and correcting mistakes along the way. Most of us cannot complete all the assigned elements of our jobs now. Policy on adopting new policies, the idea of leapfrogging over the policy committee is nullifying the process and voice of all staff and the committee themselves. This will be the downfall of our system. It's a proven fact that more eyes and ideas on policies is a good thing. And to remove the input of so many people leads the way to very dysfunctional decisions to be made. That would be virtually impossible to correct without months-long visits to board meetings. Those are the two written ones. I will say that we are going to have a discussion on the policy, on the virtual policy, at a later time in the board meeting, so I'm going to defer those questions to that time. Okay, is there any in-person public comment? Please come forward, state your name.
Hi, I'm Marty Albert. I teach third grade at Sage, and as always, I speak only for myself. I also would like to give you input for that discussion you're going to have later. 2 points on the virtual policy. First is if a student doesn't want to come to school. I've heard assurances that that will never happen. If it's in the policy, it can happen. I would request that that phrase be taken out. I know it came from the state school board suggested language. I read what they had on their website. I am uninformed if that is within the legal requirements that the legislature has put down. The second is virtual snow days. My experience with virtual snow days was with the Snow-a-cane a couple of years ago. I live in Green River. My entire town was out of power and had no internet. My principal told me to go buy a hotspot so I could teach. Where are you going to buy a hotspot or charge it in a town with no power and no internet? I was told I absolutely had to teach. I was in a position where I could not teach from my home. And so I did something incredibly unsafe because of the pressure I felt from my administrator. And I drove into Rock Springs and I taught from my school. And then I got in trouble for being in my school. When we have a policy that puts teachers where they absolutely cannot do what they're told to do, the results after that was that I was having panic attacks at work. We're people, and we can only do what is possible. And there was no possibility I could teach from my home that day, and there was absolutely no allowance for the fact that I could not. I would like that to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Madam Chair, Superintendent McGovern, Board of Trustees, I'm Glenn Subas. I'm the principal at Rock Springs High School, and I speak for the high school and all the things that are going on at the high school in this coming month. So just to kind of recap, we have several home events this weekend. From home volleyball on the 13th, we have our home cross country meet on the 14th. We have a home football game on the 14th, and then we have another round of volleyball on the 15th. So a busy weekend for the Tigers. On top of that, we're going to send about 85 to 90 kids all the way to Casper for the state marching band competition on this Saturday. The bus will leave bright and early, and they are guaranteed to be home very late that night. But we're super excited about going to Casper and watching the Marching Tigers get after it and hopefully bring back some hardware. We have the NHS induction ceremony on the 26th of this month, so we will be inducting a new round of members into the National Honor Society. We have the Don't Ever Stop consultants coming in on the 25th, 26th, and 27th. And as always, the invitation is there for the board and anybody else in the district to come to Rock Springs High School and see what the Don't Ever Stop consultants do for us at the school. We also have the home RSHS speech tournament is coming up on November 4th and 5th. And yes, we're already talking about November, so that's scary. Some celebrations. First, our parent involvement team had a meeting this last week. We had a great conversation about grading and where we're going with evidence-based grading. Great conversations, great crew. And there were about 15 parents that showed up again. So we have some involvement, but anybody who might be watching this at home, if your student is goes to Rock Springs High School, you are definitely invited to attend our parent involvement team meetings. I also wanted to make a shout out. We have community volunteers that come in on an every other day basis. They come into the school during our second breakfast. These are members of our community. They come into the school. They interact with kids. They oftentimes bring treats for our kids, so they're very popular. But we have wonderful interactions with these community members, and I want to give a shout out to them. And we're always looking for more community members who would like to come into Rock Springs High School. You are more than welcome to come into our school. We would love to see you there. Rock Springs High School is hosting on November the 9th a college fair. Backtrack. That's the next one. A career fair on the afternoon of November the 9th. We want all businesses to come to Rock Springs High School and talk to our students about careers and futures in the career industry. We have sent out flyers, and if you know of anybody that might be interested, please contact the high school. We'd love to have anybody and everybody there for the career fair. Tomorrow is our first Think College Day at Rock Springs High School. This is our chance to reach out and start getting kids to start thinking about college. And the goal is for kids to wear college gear. We have activities planned through our counseling office. And then there are prizes that will be raffled off for those that are dressed in their college gear. We want every student in Rock Springs High School to be thinking about college as well. And I want to thank Miss Stephanie Sitzler, one of our counselors, for coming up with that idea. Other good news, our learner engagement is up. And we know this because our learner discipline is down. We've been tracking discipline as one of our indicators of how successful we are doing. And we can tell that our learner engagement is up because comparing our discipline data, same time frame from last year to this year, we're down by 100 and some referrals. So we are making a significant impact on discipline because students are engaged. And that is huge. And I want to give a shout out to my educators, our facilitators in the building, because they are engaging these students and they don't have any time to get in trouble. So that's very helpful. Friday school going strong. As of this date, we've recovered 38 half credits. So we've had 38 students achieve that half a credit that could get them one step closer to graduation. So we're very proud of that. And we've only had 5 Friday schools this semester. This is a short semester. We don't have as many Fridays available for Friday school. So we are very thankful for that. I want to thank the superintendent and board of trustees for entertaining Rock Springs High School choir. That was awesome. Nothing like seeing kids just perform phenomenally. I mean, it was good. It was good. Finally, I want to give a shout out to our graduation coaches and interventionists. These were brought in due to the ESSER funds through the work of Linda and her crew and Jody and all they're doing. Our graduation coaches, Steve Akers, Amanda Margrave, and Leanne Reynolds. And then our interventionists, Michelle Tracy and Annette Vranish. These 5 individuals are making a difference at Rock Springs High School. They are engaging with kids. They are constantly meeting them in the hallway. They're setting up meetings with their parents. They're talking to them about their grades. They're helping with their credit recovery. And what we're doing is phenomenal, and we couldn't do it without those 5. They are making an impact on our school and on our culture. And I just wanted to thank them publicly for all the work that they've done. And that is all from Rock Springs High School. I would entertain any questions if you have any at this time.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Summers.
I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you for coming and reporting and the positive reports and what we hear from Rock Springs High School. It's really wonderful. So thank you, Mr. Subas, for that.
You're very welcome, and I will continue doing this, so be ready.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you.
I can try to share. I don't know, though. I have the.
You can. It's very short. It's very short. All right. Good evening, Chairman Jellicoe. I'll just stand on my tiptoes. And Superintendent McGovern and members of the board. Good evening. I'm Cheryl Notman, and I'm president of Sweetwater Education Association. I speak for the association tonight. I'm happy to say that I have been able to reach all of the candidates that are running for school board. And we are going to have a candidate forum tomorrow night here in the boardroom. All right. It will be 6 p.m. and I invite everyone that would like to come and hear what they have to offer our district. And I'm very excited to hear and see what they have to say. Please come out and support them, support our district, and come see. It will be on our YouTube channel, right, Zach? I hope. We'll chat. Yes, McGovern, right? Yes. And it will also be on YO4 News as well. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for me?
Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Good evening. Sherry Moran. I'm 6th grade at Eastside, and I'm also the vice president of SEA. I'm here tonight kind of for myself and for our members. We have questions, and I know that you said you weren't going to answer on the virtual stuff, but I just want you to know what we're looking at, okay? First of all, it had to do with the synchronous or asynchronous virtual instruction when students are at school, but the teacher is not. Several of the teachers were wondering if we have to teach when we're at home because we can't come to school due to illness or whatever, are we paid for a sick day or are we paid because we're teaching? Because if we have to teach when we're at home, we should not have to take a sick day. The next one had to do with all teachers delivering the virtual must be teachers currently employed. There was some questions from some of the long-term subs. Are they going to have to do that, record those? Are we going to record ours and give that in for them? They're kind of unsure of what they have to do and what they need to know to do. The other part was delivery to the students who do not want to attend in person for a limited number of days, less than 50% of the total school days. According to that criteria, it sounds like the kids do not have to come if they don't choose to. We have worked very hard to get the kids back into the classroom, get the kids interacting again, get them attending every day. And this is flipping all of that around, telling them it's okay. I know at the 6th grade level, we have students who miss class already for
band, for speech, for PT, for OT. They're missing this, and we're having to try and figure out how we're going to give them a grade with half the work or less already. So we're kind of wondering how it's going to work on grading. How are we going to do this? We all know that when we had virtual due to COVID, our favorite friend, kids weren't coming. They weren't coming online. They weren't doing the work. They weren't turning it in. And parents were upset because we were nagging their kids to turn this stuff in. How is that going to work differently this time if we have to do virtual? They want to know, are all the classes going to be doing virtual again? Are we going to have to record every lesson and put it online if a student's missing? Are we going back to what we did during COVID times, where everything's recorded? If they come in okay, if they don't okay, they turn it in online or they turn it in the class, depending on what they're doing. Our math program is not online. We have to take every one of those lessons, put them into Google ourselves, and have it ready so the kids can do that. They can't, I don't know. It's hard for us to understand how we're going to go back to this when we knew it did not work the first time. These kids we have are so far behind. The 6th grade now has the 3rd graders. They were, during the COVID, they were 3rd grade. We have kids who can't add and subtract. And we're trying to catch these kids up. And if we go back to allowing them to have virtual days because little Sally didn't feel like coming in today and mom's not going to argue with her, they're going to be even farther behind. And it's not going to help graduation. It is not going to help get our grades up for the kids who do actually do something, because they're not going to have that interaction that they have when they're in the building. And I think that's about it. Just kind of, we need clarification on all of this. It's very vague. And we've had parents asking, oh, so does this mean my kid doesn't have to go to school all the time? We don't know. So we're hoping you guys can clear some of this up tonight when you decide to go over the virtual stuff that you're looking at. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Further public comment?
My name is Anna Johnston, and I'm a 6th grade teacher at Eastside. My concerns with the virtual online situation that we're discussing is after we just got done tearing apart all of our data for YTOP, which, trust me, we all realize is not very pretty. And I think some of us took it pretty hard to know that we're not making the progress that we want to be making with our students. And to come in and think about going back to the virtual that we know wasn't successful is very frustrating to us. I think the other thing that speaks just clearly, I'm the data freak of the building. So if you might hear Tina tell you that, I am. I love data. And when I tore into the data, one of the biggest things that came out is that our virtual students are performing lower than our special ed students on YTOP. To me, that says what we're doing is not working. And to open this can of worms back up and to go down there with an idea that, hey, you can just maybe go to school 50% of the time. I just see this as being a real decline in our district, and it saddens my heart. And I look at my students and I wonder who's not going to make it this year and which one of you is not going to graduate. Because that's the ultimate goal, is for us to push them out into the world to be the successful adults that we want them to be. And my heart breaks thinking that this might actually move forward with what we're looking at with the data. Just the data alone is telling us this is not wise. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Jellicoe and the board. I'm Dina Fulmer, and I am a resource teacher at Eastside. I'm going to speak to what we're telling these kids now and the possible future that we're creating with this. We're telling them that they can decide to come to school. My husband is a business owner. He works in construction, and it's very hard for him to keep construction employees. So often they, for various different reasons, will just wake up one morning and say, I'm not coming to work. Where did they learn that? If we implement this at the kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade level, it's ingrained in them that they can just decide one morning, I don't want to go to work. And where does that put them as productive citizens of our community? And then as business owners, where does that leave future business owners when we're allowing these kids these decisions? That's my standpoint looking at the future of what we're raising.
Thank you. Further public comment? Further public comment?
Hi, my name is Dana Eddy. Thank you, board and Chair Jellicoe. There has been a lot of conversation now with the evidence-based grading that we are moving towards in the district. I haven't heard anything about the junior high, and I might be jumping the gun a little bit here, but I'm hearing it from the elementary age schools and the high school. Where's the middle school in this conversation? Because that's obviously a very good connecting point between the elementary schools and the high schools. So I don't know if anybody has information regarding that. That would be great feedback.
Superintendent McGovern.
Sure. Members of the board, the community, and Mrs. Eddy. The standards-based grading actually for K through 6 on the report cards has been in place for several years. And so that actually isn't a new piece for us. What we did this year was we started with Don't Ever Stop and with the high school truly out of the need. When we looked at the data for Rock Springs High School, the graduation rate, and then also really at the core, what was the crux of the problem that we were seeing at Rock Springs High School? And Mr. Supas talked about that quite a bit tonight about engaged kids learn. They do well in school, and ultimately we want them to walk across the stage with a diploma. So we started with Rock Springs High School, and we have Black Butte incorporated in there just because Black Butte and Rock Springs High School, we have students that go back and forth. So it made sense to bring in Black Butte a little bit. So after we get the high school focused on standards-based grading, then it will naturally go in to the junior high. We've had a lot of our schools ask about Don't Ever Stop with Jean and Copper to come into their schools, but truly, there's 2 of them, and we are running them ragged when they're here, and they're doing a wonderful job with our staff, our parents, and the administration, and also the board and myself. There's been a lot of team building when Jean and Copper have come in. We've had time where they've met with the board members to be able to ask questions one-on-one about what is the purpose of your work. I do think in moving forward, the whole standards-based movement to that is needed. And I think that expansion of where that falls between our staff and our teachers will grow. So right now it's really at the capacity building. It's working with our teachers to look at the YTOP blueprints, see how our kids are performing. And that's really your data to show we've got to do something different. Because what's happening, and it's really disheartening, I'm a teacher, it's hard when your students aren't performing, but you've got to be able to peel off, it's like an onion, peel off all those layers and see why is it that our kids are not performing well? Are we teaching what we should? Are we supporting our teachers the best way that we can and our administrators? And then are we measuring what we really need to? And that's kind of the crux of all the work that we're doing. Also, like I mentioned, the greatest need was Rock Springs High School to get us rolling. And then we're going to share that love through the junior high. And our K through 6 already has it. So if we start here and we've got it here, we're going to try to go right in.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment. I did attend the meeting with Mr. Supas last week, and I wanted to give him congratulations and his staff too, because they came prepared. They came with data, they came with facts. But I encourage people to show up. We've had so many questions about this. And as he said, there were 15 people there, and 4 of those were 2 married couples. So when you look at the amount of kids at Rock Springs High School, that's less than 1% of the parents that are showing up. So I just want to encourage the community to start getting involved, because we can't complain about something or not know what's going on if we're not going into these meetings and learning. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Further public comment? Further public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to the treasurer's reports. Mr. Jackman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. General Fund Treasurer's Report for the month of September 2022, beginning $17,325,002.15 and finishing with $12,085,010.16. For the school lunch program, we began with $1,235,676.21, and we finished with $1,245,206.59. And for Head Start, we began with $309,437.30, and we finished with $266,349.30. And that concludes the treasurer's report.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report, the general fund, the school lunch, and the Head Start. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We'll move on to the warrants. Mr. Jackman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Warrants from, I don't have the dates, check numbers 154272 through 154956, totaling $5,422,052.61 with associated bank transfers, credit cards, and payroll.
Is there a motion to approve? Let's see, a motion to approve and release the payments.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. I want to declare a conflict on warrant number 00154,587 in the amount of $407.50. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the warrants and releasing the payments, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay. We have for the board's information, the credit card payments, the BMO card charges, and the BMO mapped cards. So we'll move to the consent agenda. All matters listed under consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time the Board of Trustees votes on the motion unless members of the board request specific items be held and discussed separately and or removed from this section. Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. A, approval of the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 regular meeting. B, approval of the minutes from the September 12th, 2022 executive session. C, Central Administration Building, nothing to report at this time. D, this was an addendum item. Curriculum, approval of the purchase of 22 Mobile Precision 5570 Dell computers. E, curriculum, approval of the school improvement plans. F, facilities. Again, this is an addendum item. Approval of the purchase of an Atlas notification system, which is a mass notification system for the central administration building. G, finance. Approval of the purchase of software licensing and related web-hosted services from EMS Link Inc. H, students, approval for Farson Eden School elementary students to travel to Yellowstone National Park through the Expedition Yellowstone program. I, nutrition services, nothing to report at this time. Personnel, approval of personnel recommendations. K, technology, approval to renew Power School licensing and subscription fees. L, transportation, approval of the purchase of a mobile column lift. And that concludes the consent agenda, so I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item H. Is there a motion? Motion by Mrs. Summers?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mickelson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, let's go to item H, students approval for the Farson Eden School elementary students to travel to Yellowstone National Park through the Expedition Yellowstone program. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. Discussion.
I just wanted to give our teachers who are in the audience from Farson Eden a chance to explain a little bit about Expedition Yellowstone if they so chose, and explain what their students will get out of the program or what they expect.
I appreciate you all giving us the opportunity.
Please identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Jody Burnett, fourth grade.
I'm Lacey Bowman, fifth grade. If I could approach you guys really quick, just want a quick little summary that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as you can see, we thought we were going to have to give a presentation. We thought we were off the hook, but now we're back on the hook. So just a little bit about our trip. It'll be a week-long trip. We'll leave really early Monday morning. We have to go through Gardner. Our kids will stay at the youth conservation camp. The cool thing about this trip is not only will they learn about the greater expedition, greater Yellowstone ecosystem, our kids have to take care of themselves. We have to take all of our food. They have to prepare food for their classmates. They have to clean up after themselves. So not only are we getting real life science education and hands-on science education, our kids are getting real life living skills too, which I think is a benefit. We don't have that stuff in school anymore. They have to, we are taught by rangers. So Lacey and I go and we supervise. We'll take up to 10 chaperones with us. So we have a good chaperone to student ratio. We have 23 students. If you'll notice, we put our standards on there. We could have went on and on, but this, we just kind of narrowed it down. It's going to be quite expensive because we have to take our food, but we have some ideas that we can raise money.
I think just to piggyback off of it, she went on the standards piece, but beyond the standards, some of these kids won't have that opportunity to go and explore Yellowstone. And this is hands-on experts of Yellowstone and the ecosystem, and we get to experience it with them. I don't think we could give these kids a better opportunity right now with this experience.
Any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Mickelson?
It's not technically a question, but I would encourage you all to apply to BOCES for a grant to cover part of the cost.
That was on our list too.
Yeah.
Thank
Good,
you.
good.
Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing it.
Further questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just want to make a comment. Thank you for, engaging and putting this together. I had the chance when I was in 6th grade to attend Expedition Yellowstone, and it was incredible. And I'm very excited for our Farson Eden students that will get to attend. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item number 8, general board business. A, emergency approval of policy IDA, temporary virtual days policy. I'm going to lead off with this a little bit. First of all, the reason for this emergency approval is the state is mandating approval of this policy by November 1st. So that's why the emergency part is not an emergency in the true sense of the word emergency. It's emergency because it doesn't go through our normal policy committee process. That's what's making it an emergency. Okay, so just clarification for that. Okay. Secondly, we heard the comments tonight. We understand that the intent is not to go back to where we were a year or two ago, where people had to film everything, video everything, and all. This is not that. Okay, what it is first of all, we have a virtual school. So if a student wants to attend virtually, that's where they should be going, is in the virtual school. But again, this is set up so that in a snow day scenario or something like that, this is the policy that is recommended for that, okay? And so we've got to have a policy in place by November 1st. I'm guessing, Mrs. Bolton, that it's going to be one of the first policies that we take up when we do convene the policy committee shortly, within the next couple of weeks. So, it's going to be one of the first ones that we go through, but that's why the emergency approval. Okay, we are not going back to those days. We understand those were not productive days, and we're still paying the price for those days now. That's not the intent of this policy. Superintendent McGovern, you want to elaborate a little bit more on that?
Sure, happy to. Chair Jellicoe, members of the board and the community, I'm going to try to answer all of the questions and the concerns that you guys brought forward the best that we can at this point. Not repeating what Chair Jellicoe said, but hopefully adding in addition to. A couple of things about the technology uses that we have here in the district. We are in our 4th year of our secondary buildings having devices that our kids have taken home. For our elementary schools, we are in the 3rd year of taking them home. We purchased state-of-the-art technology. We were really fortunate to do so in probably the worst of times. But nonetheless, the district and our staff, our administration did a wonderful job using the ESSER funds with the purpose of what they were intended to do. And so what I'm referring to is the swivel cameras that we spent a large amount of money on to get those in place in every one of our classrooms. And since that time, we've also used the ESSER funds to get a virtual school program in place for our K-12. The virtual school, we don't really call it a program, but by the state, that's what it's identified as. But the virtual school per se is asynchronous. So the kids log into Canvas, they get some of the contact is face-to-face with their teacher through the computer, but the majority of that is going to be through their Canvas. Very different than what this policy is going to allow. So a couple of things about If a teacher is sick, then they're sick. So there is an exception that is listed here in the policy that would allow with special approval. And I believe it says on there that it has to be approval of the superintendent to do that. Having a teacher teach from home, this is not COVID. This is not the daily recording of lessons that our teachers did to survive crisis teaching. That's what we did for a long time to keep our schools open. This is very different. So having a teacher teach at home would have to be such an extenuating circumstance that would warrant approval. But it's not to ask our staff to, when they are under the weather, to do something that is above and beyond a sense of reasonableness. So that is one item I want to make sure that I address, and rest assured for our staff and for our administrators not to do that. The other is if we have students that do not have the internet, the policy refers to it a little bit, but if we have students that qualify for free or reduced, in our IT department, Stephanie has it set up that we have jetpacks that we can get the internet for those families, for kids that cannot afford that. The policy also states that in that situation, if it's more than one day, you can do communication home. So in this falls on me. So if I am closing schools, and I have had to do that several times, I don't want staff on the roads. I always have principals that say, well, are you okay if I drive in? No, I'm not okay. I want you to stay home. So when I hear those kinds of things, I'm sorry that happened to you or anyone. We don't want to put anyone in harm's way. With that, though, this policy would allow so that if it was one day, you could send out a message through Parent Square to your families with instruction for your kids to do at home. What this would allow is if it's more than one day, then there's a provision in there for how we handle those, whether it's materials that are attached to a Parent Square for families to do at home if they are our younger students, or if they are our secondary students, of course, they know the technology better than we do, but it could be their Canvas, it could be anything that's on their laptops, according to the teacher. The danger of not doing a policy like this, and we will kick it back to the policy committee, but the danger of not doing anything is it really is going to put the district back several steps. We have state-of-the-art technology, and we have flipped the district to online. So the date, Marty, that you were referring to, I will never forget it. It was September 8th. And I had a couple of minutes to make the decision, and I did, and I moved us online. And it takes about 15 minutes to move the entire district to do that. But that comes through the skill and the expertise of our staff, and then what they do with our families. So we're in a very different time. So what would happen is if this policy was approved by the board, because if we don't have something to turn in by November 1st, then we're stuck for the whole other year. We can take the policy, take it back to policy committee. It can run the process there. It can do those kinds of things. Because I will tell you, when a student doesn't want to attend, and I'm going to address that part because I know that's the sticking point, and we want to take the sting away from that. But back on that date on September 8th, it's very easy to move the district to a temporary day. And it's not just for snow days, but a couple of weeks ago, we had a water line break at North Park Elementary. Luckily, we were able to keep those students and the staff there so that we could feed them through lunch and make sure. And then we did an early dismissal and we got them home. But I will tell you, there was a backup plan that whole time with myself and Mrs. Ellison, with our facilities department and the city of Rock Springs, that if we weren't able to sustain the water pressure, we were going to have to get those kids out, because we've got to have water, you've got to have sewer, those kinds of things. And I wasn't sure we were going to be able to feed them. That would have been a perfect situation where we would have went temporary virtual for the rest of the day. So they could get the instruction that they need and not lose that contact in school. We know and what the data says about whether you have to have, some kids do succeed on the online program, asynchronous. There is a small percentage of the population that does. This policy is not addressing that. It's addressing in-person classroom, but if you have a situation that comes up, it gives you the flexibility to do pretty much whatever you need. There's provisions in there. So if you have a student that says, I don't want to go to school today, well, that decision-making is right there in black and white, and that comes down to the principal for that type of decision. So this policy is not to be an excuse for poor attendance, educational neglect, lack of engagement, uninvolved students or families, because we do agree that the best way to increase our student achievement, which we need to do, which we're working on, is to get people involved in school. Very, very different situation than what this policy is really trying to do here. Before, we just did it. We moved forward, and I'll tell you, not just in COVID, but even on those days where I flipped us online, we did it because we had the skill set and we were ready to do it. Now we're out of that crisis, and we've got to have the policy. This is where WDE, I believe, is coming from. They're saying now you've got to have Chapter 41, which comes from the State Board of Education, and that was promulgated by the State Board and approved. But in addition to that, you've got to have a local policy that now you can't just do it. You've got to have that policy backing behind you that says it's okay to do. So if this was approved, knowing that it would go back to the policy committee, there are some steps that I think would be very important to put in place. So the first one, I believe we have an administrator meeting on October 19th. And in our last meeting, we had a very brief conversation. We talked about this policy, that it was information in September and it would go before the board in October. But in that meeting on October 19th, that's when the leadership team meets again, we will talk about steps on how to make sure we're all prepared. So for example, we haven't really talked a lot about the swivel cameras, and it doesn't just have to be the swivel camera. This policy also says, hey, if there is a student that has an emergency, these are true emergencies outside of the normal homebound. Homebound is when the student is out of school for illness or hospitalization for a week. These could be that, or for a longer length of time, or it could be a very different situation. People go through a lot of things outside of the classroom, and it's not always because they just don't want to go to school. So if this was approved, the first thing that I believe would be really important, we've had a beautiful fall, and I'm afraid to say the SNOW word, but we all know. So I think one thing that would be really important is we practice what that virtual day would be. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I have a swivel camera in my office. I used it a lot. We ran the parent involvement for student achievement. That was the piece of task force for parents to be involved last year. We use that camera all the time. But guys, I haven't used it a whole lot. And if Stephanie made me do that all by myself, I'd probably screw the whole thing up. So I don't know if our teachers are feeling that. And if they do, that is perfect. But we're going to talk about that. What would be the best way for our IT techs to support our teachers? So if they haven't gotten those out and ready to go, we do have PLCs, I will say, that use the swivel cameras all the time. They record them, they bring them into their PLCs, and they watch each other teach, because you don't need a sub, doesn't cost anything, you're not doing sub plans, and you really get to benefit about watching someone in the art of doing their craft. So I think if the board were to approve this, there are some steps that we need to do. One, make sure that our administrators, we review all of that technology. We review it with our teachers and our staff. And then I think we need to practice a virtual day. But let me kind of preface that and make sure I give that in the right context. That does not mean we send everybody home. We could do that very easily when kids are here in the classroom. And I'll tell you, the junior high, when they practiced this, they did an excellent job with it. The way they had that set up, and they know much better than I, but it was to the point of where the kids would turn and they would literally practice on their computers as if the teacher was online. And how do they log on? How do they access their assignments? So that way, if that situation ever came about, then the kids would be prepared and ready to go. The same kind of thing for our little guys, and then also for our parents as well. So it's step by step, but what we did before in the pandemic is not allowed anymore. And this policy would give us the flexibility to do things that are right for our students and staff that aren't always in the virtual program.
Thank you. Hopefully that answers some of the questions that have been presented and will calm people's minds. Like I said, we know that didn't work. We're paying the price for it still in terms of trying to improve student achievement. We clearly do not want to go back there. So hopefully that clarification helps. Thank you, Mrs. McGovern. Let's move on to item 8B, trustee resignation. I would entertain a motion to approve to accept the resignation of trustee John Batolo and provide public notice of the vacancy. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, point of order. Did we vote on 8A?
Oh, excuse me, we do. We need to approve the, after all that, thank you. I'd entertain a motion for emergency approval of policy IDA, temporary virtual days policy. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mickelson?
I don't know how badly this will screw things up, but I would move to approve policy IDA to comply with the WDE timeline, subject to the policy taking top priority at the policy committee and coming back to the board after that process.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Bolton, is that the intent of the policy committee to bring this up immediately?
Yes, with the other policies that were also requested for this that we didn't get through last year. So I can't guarantee that it's going to be the first one because this same request was requested on some policies last year. We got through quite a few, but it won't be the first one. Unless you guys make the motion for me to make this the first one, and then I'm happy to do whatever the board wants. But that's the reality of our situation right now. But if you want this number one, just let me know. I don't have a problem moving it up.
Is that your motion, Mr. Mickelson?
That was the motion.
To make it the very first one that comes forward.
I just want to clarify, that is your
was
motion.
Yeah.
Can I, Chair, can I just say, Jellicoe, can I say one thing?
Sure.
The first policy that was supposed to be up was the GCN-R, which was the procedure for the evaluation system.
Oh, that's why I said I don't know about this, gonna screw it up. Yeah. Oh.
We can. I'm just letting you know that that was the next part to it. So like I said, it doesn't matter to me. That was the next one. And then after that, I don't see a problem, but.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Mickelson?
could I amend my motion to make it the number 2 priority?
Consider that a friendly amendment. Okay, so the motion is to make it the number 2 priority to the policy committee. Is that okay with the second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jackman?
Superintendent McGovern, what language is required in this thing by the WDE? I know they're saying you have to have a policy. What specifics in this policy are required? And I will say, I do have qualms. I just don't see I see items in here that it seems odd for the WDE to be having as required language.
Sure, Madam Chair, Trustee Jackman. What's listed in this sample policy meet the requirements that was provided by the Wyoming Department of Ed in their memo that came out at the end of June towards the beginning of July. So that's when the district received, all districts, in fact, in the state received notification that this would be due. So the requirements have to specialize what is considered a temporary virtual day. When would you use a temporary virtual day? How will attendance be taken? How do you monitor the integrity of temporary virtual days? It talks about if you wanted to do a teacher observation through a temporary virtual day. And it's very specific. It points out that that is not always the most practical. So of course, if that's not a mutually agreed upon avenue, but it does address that, which was required. And then notification to parents about when temporary virtual days would occur and the avenue that they would come out, which would be, in here it's called the platform, but for us it would be Parent Square, Student Square, the website, those type of things that we currently use. So everything that was required is addressed in the policy.
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Summers.
So just to kind of piggyback on that, the language I think I have the most qualms about, and maybe some of the other board members share those, are the individual student virtual days, like individual need, and that sentence about course instruction delivery to students who do not want to attend in person for a limited number of days, not to exceed for 50% of the school year. I think those are some big qualms. So is there language from WDE about individual personal days? Like, do those have to be in there? And I think those would be, I guess, I'll let you answer that question.
Superintendent McGovern.
Sure. Chair Jellicoe, Trustee Summers. The policy actually is written so that you have flexibility so that it could apply for one student if there was an extenuating circumstance that the student had with their family. It could be a small group of students. It could be a class of students. It could be the whole school. It could be 3 schools. So for example, last year when we thought we had the gas leak with Walnut, East Side, and the high school, that side of town, or it could be all the schools within the district. So it really allows for flexibility, which was, I believe, the intent coming from the Wyoming Department of Ed.
Madam Chair, can I follow up that?
Mrs. Summers, follow up?
So I think, can we, when the policy committee looks at this, I'm hoping that they'll make very clear language about maybe what qualifies as that individual virtual day. You know, because of the very vague language that's currently in here. I'm also concerned for our teachers because it is really difficult. I know many of them struggled to try to teach their kids in the class and then attend to the one online, and maybe coming up with a better way to deal with that. And I know that we have told them that they don't have to video their classrooms anymore, and some of those things. And then would this then go back on that? And what is that going to do to the stress level of our teachers, which is still a significant concern? Thank you.
Madam
Further
Chair,
discussion, Mr. Jackman.
for me to pass this policy, there are 2 items I think we need to strike until Policy Council does have a full review. And I would like to strike and leave it in the policy, just have strike through so that way they can know when the language is there. but I would like to strike through the first bullet point under criteria and requirements for TVE use. Course instruction delivery to students who do not want to attend in person for a limited number of days, parenthesis, less than 50% of the total school days, parenthesis, when the school building is open, but do not meet homebound instruction requirements pursuant to the statute. I'd like that item struck for policy council review and not to be in place until policy council reviews it. And I would like the first bullet point under TVE may be delivered in the following ways. Synchronous or asynchronous virtual delivery of classroom-based face-to-face lessons when a student is off-site in conjunction with in-person classroom instruction for classmates who are in school. Just those two items, pass the rest of the policy till review.
So if I'm understanding, is that a motion?
I would make that a motion, yes.
Okay,
Madam
So-
Chair.
okay,
I think we're going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
okay, go ahead. There's a motion on the floor, so we would have to amend the current motion. We can't have two motions on the floor. So we'd have to go back to the first motion, which is to make it the second priority. That's the motion that's on the floor. Okay, so we'd have to withdraw that motion for another motion or take action on the first motion, and then we can act on the second motion. What is the board's preference?
Madam Chair, we're going to wind up having to pass the policy tonight, regardless of what wordsmithing we can or cannot do. So I think if we just go ahead and act on the first motion, and then we can go to the second motion if we need to amend some wording.
Is that the preference? So we'll proceed with the first motion, which is to make this policy going back to the policy committee second in priority. Any further discussion on that motion? Mr. Mickelson?
Sorry, I was just looking at the Chapter 41 rules. And they're not, the section that applies to temporary virtual education days basically reads like a truncated version of the policy that we have in front of us. So if we submit something different from that, the department will probably kick it back and say you're not complying with Chapter 41. So I would strongly support not making the department tell us that we're naughty. Thank you.
So we're back to the motion on the floor, which is to make this policy IDA going back to policy committee, second in priority, if it passes tonight. Mrs. Summers.
I just want to clarify. So if we don't pass this as is tonight and then send it back to policy committee, it's likely that we'll have to wait another year to be able to do the temporary virtual days. Is that what I'm hearing? So
Yes.
if we don't pass it as written with the purpose of sending it back to policy committee to do the wordsmithing and then come back to us to set the policy, WDE will likely reject it, and then we won't have the virtual day ability to do that in place. Is that?
Would that be correct?
Chair Jellicoe? Yes, that would be correct when it's taking the language that's in the law that we have to have in it. When you guys, if you strike that out, they're likely not going to approve it, and that's exactly what will happen.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Mr. Mickelson.
So, two things. One, I really don't like the temporary virtual days for snow days. I understand the reasoning and it's super sound, but in the ever increasing industrialization of education, snow days are one thing that we can still give kids that it's like, hooray, they called my school. But I get it from the district standpoint and educationally, right? But the other is, I'm not in any way suggesting that I'm super happy with how the policy is written. And I'm really uncomfortable with policies like this not going through the policy committee, but I recognize we need to do it. And I would much rather the policy committee be the ones to do the wordsmithing and go through and hammer out a good policy rather than us try to patch things together up here. Because that's honoring the process as best we can under the timeline. So thank you.
Further discussion?
I guess I'm just not seeing in the Title 41 where that language is required.
Section 12A.
Section 12A, thank you.
And when it goes to policy committee, I'll highlight the sections that are directly from the law so the policy committee's aware.
And that's typical. That as a member of the policy committee, that is very typical. Further discussion?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, Nicole, I just don't see where 12A says individual, it says each virtual education course approved by the department shall have clearly defined requirements for the participation of any student enrolled in the course. Is that, am I on the same?
Section 12, temporary virtual education days A, the temporary virtual education days in face-to-face classes in which a district is delivering the educational program outside.
Okay, I'm sorry, I hit the wrong, you're right.
Okay,
Okay, I'm sorry.
okay.
That was, thank you,
No
Wyoming
problem.
EDU PDFs.
Further discussion? Then the motion on the floor is to approve the policy tonight, policy IDA, with the intent that it will be the second priority to the policy committee. So just for clarification, that is the motion that's on the floor. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The motion passes. Okay, now we'll go to 8B. Approval to accept the resignation of trustee John Batolo and provide public notice of the vacancy. Is there a motion? It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. Discussion.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, hearing no discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, now that the public notice, we are going to provide public notice of the vacancy. Sweetwater County School District Number 1 will receive written letters of interest from residents within the boundaries of Sweetwater County School District Number 1. Letters of interest must be received no later than 4:00 p.m. on Wednesday, November 9th, 2022, at the office of the superintendent, Sweetwater County School District Number 1, State of Wyoming, Central Administration Building, 3550 Foothill Boulevard, Rock Springs, Wyoming, 82901. So that notice will be sent out tomorrow. However, it will not appear in the newspaper until Saturday. So that's our timeline. So we are following the statute in terms of filling this position. So trustees, if you would please notice that the letters of interest will be received no later than 4:00 on Wednesday, November 9th. Please add to your calendars November 10th at 6:00 will be the interviews for those interested parties. So please add that to your calendar, okay? And we'll do that here at the CAB. And then replacement will be selected that night, and then we'll be seated for the board meeting in November. So that is the timeline, and that's the notice that will be going out. Okay? Any questions? Okay, item number 9.
Who's the rep?
Sydney, do you need to leave?
Yes, please.
Are there any parting comments that you would like to make?
Thank you for having me tonight. It was very interesting to be included on these discussions. Thank you.
Thank you for being
you.
here.
See you, kiddo.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Item number 9 is board information, which we have nothing on the agenda.
Karen.
Number 10.
Do we have a rec
Oh,
board?
Yeah, we need, since Mr. Batolo was on the rec board, and the rec board is meeting Wednesday night, day after tomorrow, at 5 o'clock? 5 o'clock, so it'd be on October 12th. Is there a volunteer that could attend that meeting? 5 o'clock, Wednesday, October 12th, in place of Mr. Batolo.
Dan, are you spending any money on capital projects on Wednesday? Oh,
So is there a volunteer?
I can do it then, if we don't have any projects
I
or
don't,
anything.
I don't know that we've had that conflict before.
Okay,
I think we better stay clear.
that's fine.
Let me check my calendar. Hold on just a minute. I can attend. At 5 o'clock, I can attend. Okay. Okay, so I will take care of that. Okay, moving to the board self-evaluation. Okay, the Board of Education is in the process of updating the board self-evaluation tool. There is no rubric for this month. The trustees will be participating in a workshop with Dr. Rod Kessler from the Wyoming School Boards Association on Tuesday, October 25th, 2022, from 5 to 8 p.m. in the Central Administration Building boardroom. So that should be on your calendars so that we can work through that. We had some handouts. Did we get those okay. These are the information that Dr. Kessler gave to me, plus you also received additional information from Kelly regarding that. So we'll deal with that on Tuesday, October 25th. We've had a couple of school board candidates here tonight. We've extended an invitation to you, and I wanted to publicly invite the other candidates to come as well, so that they can kind of see where our board evaluation system comes from and stuff. So I'll make that public announcement to those candidates that are not in attendance tonight. And thank you to those that are.
Just so you know, I'll be late on the 25th.
Okay.
I have an admin committee for the state board.
Okay.
At 4:30, so hopefully it won't run too long over.
Okay. Okay. And if you do, in the community, those candidates out there, if you do plan to attend, if you would call the superintendent's office and notify Ms. Murray, so that we can plan on your attendance and have the materials and stuff like that for you to participate. Okay, the book study. Item number 11, discussion will be held on chapters 9, 10, and 11 of the Reawakening the Learner Principles and Tools to Create School Systems to Achieve Personalized Mastery book. This completes the book, so does anyone have any comments? Anyone? I'll start off then. I thought a couple of things. The first thing that I thought was the discussion about grit and the meaning of grit and how it pertains to students and perseverance and stuff like that. I thought that was interesting. And then the other one that I thought was interesting was, slipping my mind here, some of the personalized learning that they were going through. And I thought that was interesting too. So I'm interested in seeing how that's going to apply in the high school, since this is what Copper and Jean are leading to. So, further comments? Okay, seeing none. With the election of a new board, I'm going to hold off on book studies for a while, so that, we've got the meeting in November, and then the meeting in December, the board will reorganize. And I think it would be helpful to the new board members to kind of become acquainted with the processes and stuff like that we're doing before we move into a book study. So that's my thought. Any thumbs up? Thumbs up. Okay, we got that. Okay. Good of the order. Anyone with good of the order?
Madam Chair.
Mrs. Thompson.
So the climate survey committee, we met briefly today prior to the meeting. So far, we've got some tasks down that we're going to be working on. We are going to seek information from the Wyoming School Boards Association about their climate survey process, what that entails, and if they have any cost estimates for us. We are also going to reach out to the Wyoming Education Association to see if they have any ideas on climate surveys that other districts have done. And then if we discover what other districts in the state have conducted those climate surveys, we will also reach out to a few of them to see what they liked, who did their surveys, basically the positive, negatives, and if they do it again. And that's what we have right now.
Okay, thank you for the update on that subcommittee. Further good of the order? I have a couple of items. First of all, I attended, along with Mr. Jackman and Mr. Mickelson, the Head Start open house on September 28th. The attendance at that was wonderful. Compliments to Head Start and their staff. It was so cute seeing those little kids and how excited they were to share their building with everybody that was there, and the turnout was terrific. So congratulations to them. And then I would like to announce the WSBA annual conference in Casper on November 16th through 18th. Again, a special invitation. The election will be over by that time. It may not be certified by that time, but the election will be over. And this conference is certainly open to those people who have been elected, even though you may not have been to a meeting yet. So that's just something to put out there and stuff. And if that's the case, if you get in touch with Miss Murray again, she'll make the reservations and so forth. So I'll extend that invitation not only to the board members that will be continuing on the board, but to potential new board members. So thank you. Okay, new business. Now, item number 13A, board information, policy BFG/BFGA, the policy review and evaluation / manual accuracy check. 13B, board information, policy BF, board policy development. 13C, board information is a policy BF-R, board policy development process. 13D, board information, policy BFA, policy development system. 13E, board information, policy BFC, policy adoption. 13F, board information, is policy BFF, suspension of policies. So those are all board information. G, the vacancy, 13G is the vacancy notice as of October 10th, 2022. You will notice that there are new opening dates on that. So those positions were closed for a matter of a couple of days or so, and then reopened with the intent that hopefully there may be some semester graduates or someone like that who may see a more recent opening date and wish to apply for those positions. 13H, September 2022, Head Start Governing Board and Policy Council Monthly Report. And we'll move to item number 14, which is an executive session for discussion of legal and personnel matters. I would entertain a motion to go into executive session at this time. It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. A second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are now in executive session. Uh-huh. I'd entertain a motion to return from executive session to regular session.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Mickelson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mickelson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jackman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are adjourned.